Welcome to the Contrarians, where we are right and you are wrong. I'm Julio.
And I'm Alex. Here on the show, we rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. For the first half of each episode, Contrarians Corner, we trash the fresh red tomatoes and praise the rotten green splotches, making our case any way we can.
The aptly titled Real Talk serves as the second half of each episode. This is where we discuss our true feelings on the movie we're covering. For more information on our podcast and to browse past episodes, you can head over to our website, wearethecontrarians.com.
From there, you can also access our Patreon and merchandise, because capitalism.
If you enjoy our attempts at comedic film discussions, we encourage you to subscribe and leave us a review on whatever podcatcher you use.
If you'd like to reach out to us directly, that's what social media is for. You can find us on most platforms as @ContrarianPrime.
You can also see what we look like if you go to youtube.com/@ContrarianPrime, and you can contact us by email at wearethecontrarians@gmail.com.
I think that covers it.
Then it's time for the podcast. And we are recording for Contrarians Corner for MAD HEIDI.
Hello and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. My name is Alex, joined as always by my cohort, I guess in this case my fellow militia member, battling the evil cheese empire of the Swiss, Julio Oliveira.
Am I Declara to your Heidi?
Yes. Well, I mean, I'm not trying to say I'm the leader of the two of us, but nor have I saved you in the past from, certain doom, but I'll take it.
I mean, I'm not Heidi for sure, so.
Well, I was about to say, I think you're a good-looking man, but I don't think we're as good-looking as Heidi or Clara, so they're like the Hollywood version of us.
All right, I'll take it. I mean, that's aspirational. I want to be like the Hollywood version of myself, which happens to be. If she's Mad Heidi, is Clara Mad Clara or Pleasant Clara? Happy Clara?
I suppose so. Here today to tackle a movie neither of us had ever heard of, Mad Heidi, from very recently, 2022. How would Julio Oliveira describe this movie?
Oh, well. See, now this is cheating because in the process of pulling quotes from Rotten Tomatoes, I was given definitions from critics that are obviously bigger than the two of us combined, just by the mere fact that they're quoted in the Rotten Tomatoes page. So I got some words that I can throw around, exploitation being probably the most common out of those. Is this a modern exploitation film? Is that how you would describe it?
It's very grindhouse. I thought of Hobo with a Shotgun more than once while watching this.
The movie.
The signature that plays before the film says Swissploitation. So, I guess that's not too far off. It was a movie that was partially crowdfunded as well. So it's grassroots. No pun intended with all the cows in this, but I guess a grassroots exploitation film.
Man, what I wouldn't give to look at the rewards on the tiers for that crowdfunding campaign. I mean, if it's Kickstarter or Indiegogo, they're probably still there. You can still go and look them up. Have a block of cheese.
Yeah, I'm on the website for it right now, and they have a lot of things you can buy related to it. Obviously, the movie got made, so they hit their goals, but a fascinating movie, the premise of which we're going to get to here shortly. The reason we're covering it, we're going to get to here shortly. But Julio, this is an 87%er on Rotten Tomatoes. So for the reviews that it acquired, it was positively received. We have 31 reviews that comprise that 87% on the tomato meter, with an audience score of 95%, made up of over 500 reviews. Not certified fresh. They didn't hit the threshold. Yes, exactly.
This will push it over the edge, the exposure on the Contrarians podcast.
Hey, I hope so. A movie like this, if it really is that grassroots, there's a possibility, man, that people involved with this may come across this podcast.
Man, if that's the case, please make sure you understand the gimmick.
Yes, please make sure you listen to the opening that explains what we do here, and have a little bit of patience for some real thoughts in the second half. Release date looks like it had a limited release in theaters, June 21st of 2023. It was streaming in December of 2022, so might have got a little bit of groundswell there that helped to get a bit of a limited theatrical release. And as I mentioned, 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. Julio, which quotes did you pull for us today?
I look fantastic. Good work, Gutzweiler.
Thank you, my very Swiss leader. I'm very proud of the results.
All right. So, Alex, you said 31 critics altogether?
Yes, sir.
All right. So 2 of those critics I'm saving for Real Talk, because those are the 2 people that have requested this movie from us, that have demanded it. So we'll get to them in Real Talk. But there's plenty of other fresh quotes. I'm going to start with Dan Tabor from Synapse, who says, Mad Heidi was a pure dose of old school's Lee's that from start to finish is trying to hit every subgenre while continually upping the madness. Old school's Lee's, Alex. We're talking about how 21st century this movie is, but is it reaching back to...
Oh, yeah. This is reaching back to like the midnight classics of the 70s and 80s for sure.
Talking about like boobs in prison.
Yeah, I mean, nudity, the violence in this is obviously insane. This is the type of movie that late 70s, early 80s, you could have only seen at the theater, and it never went to syndication, even like into the 90s or 2000s, because by that point, everyone had forgotten about it. And when it was relevant, there was no way it could be edited down to actually be on television. You know, we talked a lot about Tarantino recently, so I'm trying to avoid saying things like Grindhouse and, you know, the drive-in and shit like that. But I mean, I think this more than qualifies for that discussion.
Absolutely. And I have to tell you, as much as we try, Tarantino will be inescapable once we get to Real Talk and the quotes that I have there.
Fascinating.
Next, Federico Forzan from movieblogger.com says Mad Heidi is a good example of an unadulterated film that works better without the intervention of an organism set on establishing rules. It will probably be denigrated by some because of its spirit, but that's what makes it an interesting film. This guy is 100% against the man. He doesn't want to be regulated. What is he talking about? He's talking about, when you make your own movie without outside financiers and you're free to do whatever you want. Sounds like anarchy.
I suppose so. And in this, you're not constrained to making your movie, the lighting suck and the CG terrible and outstanding against the real aspects of it.
When there's no rules. We all have rules.
When there are no vacancies in hell, the dead will walk the earth and make movies like Mad Heidi.
I think that maybe he's just complaining or taking a dig at the MPAA, right? The organism that establishes the rules. This is unrated, right?
Yeah, to my knowledge. I mean, this, to be fair, this doesn't even have like a Wikipedia page. There's not really much you can find in the way of like a full-on plot summation on the internet, aside from, the one sentence on IMDb or on Rotten Tomatoes. It's so yeah, to my knowledge, there's not a rating to it.
It seems we went on a similar journey, but I'll tell you, Alex, it has a Wikipedia page. It's just in Swedish.
Oh, hell yeah, brother.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's awesome if you know Swedish. I don't. I guess we could trust Google Translate, but I wasn't going to go there. Next, Ian Simmons from Kicking the Seat says, for those looking for more than processed meat on the bones of their over-the-top entertainment, Mad Heidi may represent yet another new subgenre, thoughtsploitation. What are you talking about, Ian?
And also, Julio, I'm not sure it's Swedish. I believe it's in German.
That was going to be my next guess.
The Wikipedia entry. That's Julio. He's the immigrant, so he gets to be xenophobic like that.
Look, it was a bunch of letters arranged in an order I didn't recognize. The movie's set in Switzerland, so I assumed it was Swedish. It's a bunch of German allusions during the movie, so my next guess would have been German.
You don't say.
Yes. I don't know how Casper Van Dien didn't have like the Hitler mustache. Maybe that's in the director's cut. It opens with him shaving shaving it off.
That'd be awesome.
Thoughtsploitation, Alex. What is he talking about? What is this?
Thoughtsploitation?
Yeah.
Like thoughts, like the modern slang for a promiscuous young woman?
No. You just enlightened me as to I've seen that word and now I know what it means.
Yeah.
I thought it just meant woman that is on OnlyFans.
I guess that's one way of looking at it.
Okay, well, I would be down for that kind of thoughtsploitation, but no, this is thought as in like the thought that's coming from your mind.
Using your brain. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, this movie, to get to it right away, is very obviously a satire on and a condemnation of
Cheese?
Nazi-run Germany.
Oh,
Oh, and also cheese, yes.
Nazi cheese, even.
It did a good job because there's so much cheese in this movie. When it was over, I was like, man, I really don't want cheese right now.
That was its no so secret agenda. Just go after big cheese.
I take that back. I'm a fatty, so when the grandpa said the best cheese is fried cheese, it was like, goddamn, some mozzarella sticks would be good right now.
Mad Heidi would be appalled at the fact that you're going against the message of the movie. All right, we're going to close with Nathaniel Moore from AIPT, who says, a love letter to the exploitation films of past days. Alice Lucy, I think that's the actress that plays Mad Heidi, proves herself to be a capable action star in a story filled with memorable characters. It is refreshing to see modern cinema so readily look to the 70s for inspiration. Nathaniel, they've been doing that for years now. Been ripping off the 70s for a decade at least.
Yes, pretty much every movie that's been made for the past 30 years has tried to be Rocky or Star Wars. So I think the 70s are still very much relevant in that way.
Listen to our Hereditary episode.
What was Scorsese's... was it Mean Streets? Was that his first movie?
He's been chasing that Mean Streets high since.
Exactly. Mean Streets and Raging Bull. You know, he's tried to get there ever since. So yeah, I understand a lot of shit sucks now, and the filmmakers of today don't really know that movies exist before 1995. But come on now, by and large, the whole industry has been trying to get back to the 70s.
Yeah, I think maybe this guy Nathaniel, maybe he's just proud, happy that people were not stopped by the fact that there's no 70s movies streaming anywhere. And they actually went out there, went to flea market, found these really old movies from the 70s. And they're like, oh, what if we make a movie like this?
All right. So I did find the German Wikipedia page for Mad Heidi.
Uh-huh.
And
are you using Google Translate?
I am, but it's also offering very tickling things like Goat Peter, the boyfriend. The name on here is Geisen Peter. And so like the words before it, Heidi lives in the mountains with her boyfriend, Geisen Peter. And so it'll work a little bit, but it won't do all the work for us. Now, before we get into it real quick, Julio, I know you said you're going to save their thoughts for the second half, get to some real talk here shortly, but what is the reason for the season? Why are we discussing this film that neither you or I had any prior knowledge of? Why has this come into Contrarians Canon?
This comes to us courtesy of patrons Katie and Oti from the For Your Reference podcast, and they being on a tear of just having these movies that I just see them pop up on their feed. I'm like, I don't know what this is. And then they expand my horizons. Mad Heidi is one of those. I, of course, knowing that we were going to have to do this episode, I haven't listened to their thoughts on it, but I did read the Rotten Tomatoes quotes. So I know that they're positive on it. But basically, Katie sent me two options, Mad Heidi and then another movie that we're going to do later on. She said Mad Heidi was really crazy and it was about cheese. And I said, all right, I'm in. That sounds, we live in America. That sounds like something we can wrap our heads around. Little did I know that this was very much outside, at least my comfort zone. I think that maybe you're a little more in your element. Fried cheese aside, I think that
it should be called out that I texted Julio about 10 minutes into this, and I was like, I don't know if this is going to be a Julio Oliveira movie.
What gave it away, Alex?
You've been visiting Goat Peter again.
And how was your day?
Look, that boy, Goat Peter, is trouble, I'm telling you.
All right, so let's kick off here and give a shout out to Google Translate. From the German Wikipedia page, we are offered this. Heidi lives in the mountains with her boyfriend, Goat Peter, and her grandfather. Goat Peter gets in the way of Swiss president and cheese magnate Miele. How do they pronounce it?
Miley Shapiro.
Miley. Jesus Christ. Meili. Miley. Furman, German. By selling his own cheese, which displeases the monopolist Miley. As punishment, Peter is executed by Commander Knorr in front of Heidi's eyes. Heidi is arrested and taken to a women's prison in the mountains. There, she is mistreated by her fellow prisoners and forced to eat Miley's cheese so that she can become strong and take part in the brutal Alpine Wrestling Festival. Heidi kills the prisoner director and manages to escape. In a monastery, she develops into a rebellious Amazon who is determined to put a stop to the cheese fascists. During one of her campaigns, she is captured and forced to take part in the wrestling festival. There, she can defeat her opponents and, together with her grandfather and other members of the resistance movement, kill Miley. What's the dude's name? Casper Van Dien?
Rico from Starship Troopers.
Yes, of Starship Troopers fame. Well done. So this movie is an homage, a throwback, the exploitation movies of the day. Your Dolomites, maybe even, the Grindhouse movies. Hobo with a Shotgun, like I said, is like a modern example that immediately came to mind as a contemporary of this. With that, there is it's not even thinly veiled. It's basically a satirical, almost comedic retelling of Nazi Germany in the sense that there's this dictator that wants to impose Swiss cheese all over the world and domestically is trying to eradicate those with lactose intolerance, saying it's, kind of ruining the economy and they're poisoning society from within. Some might find this funny, Julio.
Some might find it offensive, especially people that actually suffer from being lactose intolerant.
Yeah, it's a twofer. So it's one thing to satirize Nazis and, the idea of Germany at that point in time under Hitler rule, but it's also another thing to make fun of people with an affliction like lactose intolerance and try to call them out for, causing disruption to the force, so to speak. So in two ways here, within the first 2 minutes of the movie, we're already like, is nothing sacred? Is there no line you won't cross?
Yeah, it's this is going to be from now on like one of my exhibits whenever somebody goes like, oh, they would never make that type of movie today. We're like, this was made in what, 2022, 2023? I mean, you would think that somebody would have stopped it at some point, the filter, like, maybe we shouldn't target a vulnerable group of people in society, make fun of them here. Because even though they are not the villains, the lactose intolerant community, they're not villains. They are the punchline for 90 minutes. So I think that maybe we could have found a better target. It's like the Nazis are enough. And then here's the thing. This is what happens when a movie is not engaging you, because you start just wondering and digressing. I'm like, have we maybe reached the point where picking on old Nazis is kind of it's played out, right? Because we have new Nazis now. Like you need to go back to like Hitler's Germany or
you could have had President Miley again. I'm sorry, I just watched this movie and I already forgot to pronounce
Rico.
The name, but Rico, Casper Van Dien. He could be like the governor of Florida and trying to impose all sorts of insane bans on food that are corrupting children's minds or some shit like that.
Well, and then, the third element is the cheese. I didn't...
How do you feel about cheese, Julio? You a big cheese guy?
I thought I was, but after watching this movie, I feel like I guess I don't have opinions that are as strong about cheese as they should be. Because the people that made this movie, they are very passionate about all types of cheese, and it made me question if maybe I wasn't pulling my weight when it came to arguing about which cheese is better and how much cheese we should be consuming. I mean, I'll give him this. It's original. I don't think that you're ever going to see this much cheese discussed and being part of the plot like in any other movie. But I kind of feel like 5 jokes about cheese is probably all you need in your movie, as opposed to 500 jokes about cheese.
Well, it's beyond even joking. Like, there's cheese torture and shit. Like, our evil, more so than Miley, the president, the dictator,
Rico,
more so than him, Commander Knorr, like his man in charge of the militaries, I view as like the real bad guy of this. And our introduction to him in the beginning is he guns down who we come to learn later are Heidi's parents, but he tortures a guy by having one of his henchmen dump like boiling cheese onto his face. It's
delicious,
pretty fucking gnarly. And then he kills him by hammering a Toblerone through his throat.
Just mixing it up a little bit.
I mean, again, this is a movie that's supposed to be like a critique and a satire on Hitler-run Germany, and this is what we're doing.
That's the problem, maybe, that I can recognize like the outline of the Nazi regime and just those type of authority figures, like those dictators and so on. But adding the cheese and the Switzerland of it all kind of confuses things, because Switzerland, in my humble opinion, lacks the strong cultural identity that we associate with places like Germany or France or, the United States. That's not necessarily in the real world. That's not a bad thing. I think that the best thing for a country is to be as low key as possible. Nobody bothers you. Nobody makes fun of you. But this seems like an effort from the filmmakers to be like, no, we want to play with the big boys. We want to give ourselves like a bad reputation. We want to be known for something. So we're going to create this fake dictator and this fake war, this fake revolution, and we're going to like melt cheese all over it, and we're going to have boobs. It's just such a weird effort. I don't know what they're trying to do with the movie. And so if this is supposed to be some sort of criticism of Nazi Germany, that gets absolutely lost. It just the mindfuck that is like the fact that the story is taking place in Switzerland. That overrides any other thoughts that I could have had while watching the movie.
This is not Swaziland. This is Switzerland!
My sincere apologies.
So, as we mentioned, the movie begins with Heidi having a boyfriend, Goat Peter, who is like a cheese dealer. He's a black market cheese dealer who makes his own cheese from goats. We find out the reason it's so good is because he has sex with these goats, and he says happy goats make happy cheese. I can't remember exactly what he says, but
is that a stereotype? Is that a thing?
What, having sex with goats?
Like people having sex with goats. I don't know for better cheese, but just because.
I don't know. The only stereotypes I remember when I was like younger, and when you learn those kind of things, is like rednecks or chicken fuckers, that type of thing. I've never particularly heard that the Swiss like to bang goats. So
are we learning things here?
I don't know. You tell me.
One Swiss listener we have, probably.
Johann Hartmann, director of this. But he is captured for dealing his own cheese and is executed in the city square in a horrific fashion. And also, to not feel left out, Sandro Klopstein there was 2 directors on this film.
Which of the directors approved the racist caricature that they use when they're IDing Goat Peter?
Which was what?
You know what I'm talking about? Like when they're like, they pull up, like they detain him and then they pull up like this really racist drawing of a black dude and they look at him and I'm like, oh yeah, that's him.
I mean, it's satire, Julio.
Oh.
It's exploitation.
It's not successful if it doesn't offend you.
We've talked about 2 counts of this, and Goat Peter gets his head blown clean off here. I'm a bit more of a fan of the ludicrous violence, Julio, than you are. I knew this could be something you kind of roll your eyes at, so now's the time, because this movie's just a fucking bloodletting. Your thoughts here on the often practical but insanely over-the-top violence that this movie exhibits? Are
you telling me this was a practical effect? His head blowing up?
It looked half and half. it looked like some of the blood spurting out was like kind of enhanced in CG. Is what I was talking about. That movie I recently talked about, Triple Threat. I'll fuck with that if you do some practical effects, but you just enhance it with CG. But if it's all CG, then no. But yeah, it looks like they had a prop head explode and then just kind of, churched it up a bit with some post-production CGI.
I think more than a bit. That looked like something that would be at home in a superhero movie or Jurassic World, one of those things, which is like really bright, really.
That's the type of shit Tom Savini used to have wet dreams about, like that. There's multiple decapitations in this. A guy gets his fucking abdomen ripped open at one point, like with his rib cage. It like opens like a fucking oven door, and but just in general, you think this is too much? I mean, this movie in general is too much, but the violence we're speaking to here, Julio, I know is something that you can be pretty picky about. What are your thoughts on the violence in this movie?
I think that it's one thing to use it as punctuation, and it's another thing to use it as this sort of symphony. Because, I'll be honest with you, when Goat Peter got killed, I didn't see it coming. For one, I thought that he was protected because I assumed that he was going to be a co-protagonist, right? Like it's MAD HEIDI and he was going to be the sidekick. So I didn't see it coming, that he was going to get executed right away. And then, yes, it's pretty spectacular the way that his head explodes. So at that time, I'm like, okay, that's cool. And my main thought was like, I wonder if Alex is going to have a problem with this just because it's not, they didn't actually shoot the guy. They used computer effects. But then this just keeps happening throughout the movie. And so it kind of loses its power when you see it every 5 minutes or so. And it's just like very, it's just not special anymore when every big like set piece has this over the top gore. I think that maybe 2 or 3 of these, like the cheese jokes, like, a little bit goes a long way. You could have just had like the most important deaths be that explicit, that graphic, and then everything else just a little more toned down. So at this time, I'm on board. As the movie goes on, I became numb to it.
It is diminishing returns personified. She attempts to flee, goes back to her home where the Commander Knorr and his goons cut her off. Her grandfather attempts to defend her. He ends up shooting one of the guards who, on his way down, shoots his gun off, which blows up the house. So at this point, we think grandfather's dead. Heidi gets taken to the aforementioned women's prison, where she's going to be trained to wrestle in like this battle royal to the death for the entertainment of what'd you say his name is? Rico?
Rico.
Yes, and the French delegates that he's trying to impress. And he has this grand scheme that through the power of cheese, he's going to be able to take over the world. As one does. This stay here in prison is pretty much just an extended montage, which also features a montage, but it's her getting bullied and, not knowing how to wrestle. There's these very large bodybuilders that she's celled with, and, they're quite mean to her. We see a lot of cheese being eaten. At one point, the warden and Commander Knorr have a very fascinating interaction.
All right, let's get to it. What is it a sausage dildo? Is that what comes into play in this scene?
It certainly looks like it, dipped in what I presume to be hot mustard. Okay,
because I didn't know if it was like nacho cheese, to keep in theme with what the movie's been telling us. But I guess mustard makes more sense from the culinary side of it.
Katja Kolm plays Miss Rottweiler, I believe is her name in the film. And she inserts a Fräulein Rottweiler. That's right. They call her Fräulein. A hot mustard covered sausage that appears to be on some sort of like, I don't know. Basically, it functions as a item that penetrates Knorr's backside as he acts like a dog.
Are we revealing how prude we are? All the way here in Texas, US, where it's like in this country of origin, in Switzerland, people are watching this and are like, oh yeah, it's the sausage vibrator.
They got their arms folded like, yeah, all right. Call me when he rolls over. This is the Tarantino moment of the movie that, is just kind of like, okay, This is out of nowhere. And then it just, doesn't come back up again. I mean, spoiler alert, Fräulein does get killed, and Knorr is very sad, but the sausage penetration makes one appearance here. Rock and roll.
Well, you could argue that's one too many.
Yeah, exactly.
Möpsli. You truly are insatiable.
We're maybe halfway through the movie at this point. And Alex, have you noticed that we've had very little to say about MAD HEIDI herself? We talked about Goat Peter. We talked about her grandpa. We talked about the sausage dildo.
Dude, she's babyface Roman Reigns here. It's like, who fucking cares? It's not until they let her like be herself in the second half that it's like, all right, now we're in business.
Yeah, that is, she's bland Heidi until the midpoint of the movie. How about this wrestling? You're the wrestling fan, Alex. How do you qualify? How do you quantify? How do you rate the wrestling that's going on here in this prison? Because it's not regular wrestling. It's
the Alpine wrestling's what they call it. It's got some influences from sumo in there when they grab the waist belt and throw them around and whatnot. It's one of those things. I was very confused watching this because the guards and Fräulein Rottweiler keep talking about like, oh, President Miley is gonna fucking love her. I'm like, for what? Like, they kind of explain that there's gonna be this event where they wrestle. What they don't explain is that it's like fucking Gladiator where they just fight to the death. And so I didn't really understand the urgency or, what this was all for. The stakes were not accurately explained to me.
But even, with hindsight, right? Once you know that it's Gladiator, she's no Russell Crowe. I mean, when you're watching Gladiator...
Who is? Come on.
Right. But she's not even trying. I mean, when you're watching Gladiator, Russell Crowe is... You instantly understand why people are drawn to him, why he would rise to the top, and why people would be excited whenever he enters the arena. As we just said, like, there's nothing in Heidi's persona that would make you think, oh yeah, this is going to be my champ. Like, I need to train her. And what has she done to merit all this attention? Like, she was a little bit defiant, I think, when she first arrived at the prison, right? And they're doing the cheese test. But that's not enough to qualify for her. And then I guess they keep referencing her parents as if that makes her special. But it's also, I mean, they were just regular revolutionaries. It's not like she has the Force. She's not Rey. She's not Kylo Ren. She's not the chosen one. So even when the fascination is finally explained, you're like, oh, it's because she's going to compete in this tournament. It doesn't really make sense.
She does get a Rey montage, though, at one point in this.
Oh, yeah.
She has like a telekinetic link with grandfather. We learn he's still alive, and it gives her the power to go on. She's currently in solitary confinement when this happens, and she finds like a bone shrapnel from someone who had perished there that she keeps by her side for the right moment. There's one guard comes in who's been bullying her, and we get the Michael Madsen scene from Reservoir Dogs where she puts on music and just beats the shit out of Heidi until Fräulein Rottweiler comes in. It's like, all right, that's enough. And then she gets the bone through the throat. It's metal as fuck. I
was so overwhelmed by everything that was going on and trying to make sense of it. I thought it was a piece of cheese that was used to kill Fräulein Rottweiler. I completely missed the fact that it was a bone.
Hey, man, it happens. You can't watch this and not have cheese on the brain.
Yeah, everything. I mean, they trained me to do that through the first 30 minutes of the movie or so. And also, I was just furiously scribbling on my notes, like Michael Madsen, Mr. Blonde.
Stuck in the middle with you.
It's such a blatant ripoff. Okay, it's one thing if you're going to commit to just doing the 70s homage, so to speak, and you're just going to draw inspiration from that. But Reservoir Dogs is like early 90s. I mean, that's 20 years later. You should leave that alone. There's no way of if you've seen Reservoir Dogs, even if you haven't seen Reservoir Dogs, that scene is so famous.
Oh, yeah.
How could anyone watch this and not think that's just the Mr. Blonde scene? It's not even like they do a new spin on it. It's not like she's not eating cheese while she's dancing. It's just straight up a ripoff of that scene.
Literally all that was missing was cutting off the ear.
Yeah.
And asking, "Can you hear me?" But Fräulein is dead after getting stabbed in the neck with a bone, as I mentioned. Heidi begins to escape. She wants to take Clara. So the quick backstory on Clara. When Heidi is apprehended and taken off to the women's prison in the same convoy as Clara, and they kind of buddy up because they're both, scared, smaller than the other women there. So they band together. She goes to try to help her out, and Clara's been cheese poisoned. She's just surrounded by empty, trays, containers, and talking about it's almost breakfast. I'm going to get some more cheese. And Heidi promises, "I'll make this right. I'll come back for you." And, we'll escape.
All right. So is this movie, I know we kind of like opened with this, but I don't think that we settled on a point. We settled on a position. Is this movie pro-cheese or anti-cheese?
I don't know.
Right? Because here in prison, they're using cheese as a means of torture. Like, that's the whole point, that Clara was resistant to eat cheese, and now she's just pigging out on cheese because she's been broken. So that's like, cheese is bad, right? And then
it's a cautionary tale on the power of cheese. If you give it too much power.
Oh, there you go. Good in moderation.
Like anything in this day and
this
age.
Movie, the balls of this movie to talk about moderation when that's the last thing it has.
Kenora and his goons chase down Heidi on her escape, and they corner her on the edge of a waterfall. And Heidi says, "I didn't kill anybody." And Kenora says, "I don't care." And then Heidi jumps off the waterfall.
I mean, if that had happened, I would have been like, why not? They already ripped off the rest of her dogs.
She does put her arms up in a cross-like manner and just kind of falls backward, like the opening mission of GoldenEye on N64 when you jump off the dam there. It's I just started joking about, I made the fugitive joke first, and then that's a scene in the Wet Hot American Summer TV show where H. John Benjamin, is that Archer's name?
Yep.
He's a can of vegetables, and he gets cornered. He jumps off the waterfall, and then he comes up out of the water, and I'm alive. I'm alive. I was really hoping Heidi was going to pop her head up and say so. But she wanders into a monastery, like we said, like this abandoned, what appears to be abandoned cathedral, monastery, whatever you want to say, and finds a bottle of absinthe and takes a big old swig from it, maybe a couple, and sees a ghost, a keeper, so to speak, who I honestly thought might have been Meryl Streep when they first showed her.
Maybe the Swiss version of Meryl Streep.
Julio, you ever fuck with absinthe?
No, because I watched Eurotrip, and that was a good warning.
I can't remember if I talked about it in that episode. I have had absinthe before, but kind of like a body high, but I did not do any hallucinating or anything like that. Because, the potent shit, I think the kind Heidi drinks here is not the kind I could get my hands on in America. But I remember it tasted like black licorice, a little bit like Jägermeister, and definitely got me buzzed. But I was not, the walls were not melting, and I did not see two masked nuns that trained me on the art of sword fighting and forged a weapon from steel for me that I would take and cut the penises, testicles, and heads off of foes that got in my way.
This would be a very different podcast if that had been your experience.
I managed to increase the lactose proportion to no less than 88%.
Back with President Miley, we learn that there's a cheese that's being developed, ultra Swiss cheese. Is that what they call it? Mega Swiss cheese. And at this point, if you're wanting to have it confirmed that this is they're Nazis and supposed to be that, they say the cheese is 88% lactose, with, of course, the number 88 being prevalent in Nazi culture. It's
a deep cut for those World War II enthusiasts.
If anyone's listening is not sure what I'm talking about, 88 is an abbreviation for Heil Hitler, as H is the 8th letter in the alphabet. So HH. Not to be confused with HHH, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Triple H, Paul Levesque, who now runs the WWF.
Two very different forces, one for evil, one for good.
But Julio, this cheese, it's a mind control cheese. It turns you into a zombie, and then you just take instruction from Rico, President Miley.
In all caps, underlined, highlighted, why not? Why not turn it into a zombie movie at this point? You're right. MAD HEIDI is undergoing Jedi training. So, of course, on the other side, we have to prepare her adversaries, cheese zombies. It's fine. Look, obviously, at this point in the movie, I was just... I wasn't just numb to the cheese jokes and the gore. I was just numb at the outrageousness. You know, President Rico could have shown up in his Starship Troopers gear. I would have been like, of course, that was the next thing that was going to happen. The one thing that kept bothering me, more so than the logic behind the zombie cheese and the Swiss wrestling and all that, is like, this movie that's 100% Swiss, like it couldn't be more Swiss. Everybody speaks English. What's the deal there? We've embraced, this is a new movie. This is a movie that's very recent. We've recently embraced international cinema and international movies that are not made in English, like embrace their subtitles now. That's a point of pride. But this movie instead, I feel like it waters down its outrageousness by trying to please English-speaking countries.
According to our friends at Wikipedia, the languages of Switzerland, 62% German, 22% French, 8% Italian, and a little bit of Romanish mixed in there.
Well, what's the percentage for English?
5.
It's a very powerful 5%.
Well, that's just there's a 5% immigration population that speaks English, so betraying their country's native languages. Sad. Hate to see it. But Heidi is learning the ways of what she's capable of, becoming a fucking, superhero at this point, quite literally. And meanwhile, her grandfather enlists the help of Goat Peter's dad and a bunch of other local yokels as they put together this militia, this rebellion to come and fight the evil cheese empire. It culminates after Heidi is just wrecking shop, wiping out these guards left and right, just a trail of blood, a sea of blood in her wake. And she's confronted by the neutralizer, they call in, who's like this immigration officer who just denies every application and gets a call that says it's time. And he has this big fucking suit that is something you would... I don't know. This is something you would see in a video game, Julio. It's got like a big bull head on it. It kind of looks like, who's Wolverine's nemesis? Is it Super or Silver Samurai?
Silver
Samurai. It's got a little bit of that to it. And yeah, this is something, this would be a boss in a video game. Probably not the final boss, but the one that sets up the final boss.
So this one's out for European listeners. Is Switzerland a hard place to get into as far as immigration? Is that why this is a joke? Like, is that what's powering this this boss? Because you're right, he's an immigration agent, and you see him denying visas, and then what's the joke that the approved stamp is like all dusty and
it's got cobwebs around it.
Yeah, and they're like, yeah, just throw that away and use the ink from that one to keep denying visas. And I was like, I guess this is funny if in the real world it's really hard to immigrate to Switzerland, but I don't know if that's another like Swiss stereotype that I'm not aware of. Then please enlighten us, because the movie was just confusing.
What do you think of the neutralizer?
As a boss, as an enemy,
just the aesthetic, the ability. He's quickly able to, for lack of a better term, neutralize Heidi and get her to the swing fights, the big tournament of death here.
Yeah, but it doesn't.
Does it go in line with what your thoughts on the movie are? That, like, of course, there's this accountant who has a suit like this and comes into battle.
Yeah, but more along the lines of like, of course, they would have the joke of him being an immigration agent, and then that wouldn't come into play at all once he becomes a supervillain. You know what I mean? Like, they could have grabbed any random person and given them that suit, and that would have worked. It's like the joke of him being what's it called? The denier? The
denier? The neutralizer.
The neutralizer. The joke is his introduction, and so he doesn't even have like stamps as weapons. It's just like a dude with a funny helmet. So it just felt half baked. The real fight, if anything, it is not that I was super invested in it, but something that had kind of a through line was her nemesis in the prison. Like from her prison time, she had butted heads with this woman that was like twice her size. And then once they drag her into the arena for the big wrestling tournament, of course she was going to face off against this woman. And so that I was interested in. I was like, all right, there's some history. Let's see how it pays off. Were you satisfied with the wrestling once we finally got to the official wrestling match?
I mean, yeah, she was just trying to make everyone open their eyes as to what was going on. They were being brainwashed by the cheese. This is where we get to what is continuously referred to as the swing fights. And we are reconnected with Clara, who gets the fuck beat out of her immediately. And yes, Heidi takes the stage with her former cellmate who bullied her, gave her constant swirlies, and she clearly has her defeated. They do bring out the neutralizer here for the final battle, so to speak, and they attempt to double team him. The cellmate is picked up, her neck is snapped. Heidi has an intense back and forth with the neutralizer, cuts his balls off, and then is able to cut his head off. And up until this point in the movie, if you thought there was copious amounts of blood, this takes it completely over the edge. The shot on the decapitated head just spewing blood, I honestly got to a point where it's like, when is the shot going to end? Is this too many cooks? What are we doing here?
Did you miss the cutaway to Mike Myers on the crowd celebrating the swing tournament?
Well done.
Swing! Swing! Tentpole! She's a babe.
War breaks out here, though, as the resistance shows up and all of the Swiss army it's just a hail of gunfire. I believe we get a Wilhelm scream in here. I think I heard that, so I'm going to have to consult the IMDb trivia section to ensure that's accurate. But yeah, at this point, all hell breaks loose. There's action on every inch of the screen. Julio, is this another why not?
Yeah, well, this we knew was coming, right? Like there was no way that this wasn't going to end in the big fight between the Grandpa's militia and the cheese zombies and Rico's army and all that. It's just, this wasn't even trying to be outrageous, because this is actually, there's one more outrageous moment, which we'll get to in a minute. As you were talking about Swiss armies, Alex, I just realized, do they have a single Swiss Army knife joke in a movie that's so obvious about some of its humor? They do? Because I don't remember.
Yeah. Heidi is killing all of the guards, and one of them's pinned down and takes out a Swiss Army knife and tries to use it as a weapon.
Okay, I remember now. Well, that is not surprising. Yeah, this is, I mean, it's just an action movie. I'll give Casper Van Dien props. I'm not going to say that he's the only one that knows what kind of movie he is in, because everybody knows what kind of movie they're in. But I think that he's the one that hits the notes more accurately, more often. And maybe that's because they never give us a whole lot of time with it. You know, he shows up and then he has like a couple minutes of screen time, then they push him away so we can have some more action scenes. But here's his big moment, right? Because there's no escaping. He's going to have to fight. And so I guess by the end of the movie, I was like, okay, I guess I'm okay with this guy as a bad guy, even though it's not that impressive. But then they break into his lair and we have the big reveal of the women that are being milked for cheese. And that's when I thought we've gone too far.
That's like a Simpsons joke almost. There's one where they find out all the school supply of milk is coming from rats. And then also Marcus on Superstore. I forget the actor's name. He's Ike Barinholtz's brother. But his big money-making idea is human cheese, like using breast milk to make cheese from it. And so I immediately started laughing just thinking about, that's always good when you start laughing at the joke from another TV show or movie that's not the one you're watching.
I mean, let's not forget Robert De Niro and Meet the Parents. I have nipples.
I have nipples, Greg. little Geppetto. Yeah, they're on all fours with all these tubes strapped to them. Look like they just came out of their pods in the Matrix, and it's pretty intense.
It is. But is this a movie trying to be some sort of critique of, like revealing its vegan agenda? Is that really what we're in? Right? It shocks you. It's grotesque when you see it done to humans. Therefore, should we have the same reaction when it's done to animals? Is that really what's happening?
I couldn't tell you, Julio, because in the time it took me to register what was going on, Casper Van Dien had a hose of milk up his ass, and it was cranked to max capacity, I guess you'd say. There was a skull and crossbones on the gauge, so you knew it was bad, but this hose of milk goes up his butt, and it blows his head off. Because why not, right?
Because why not?
And did you know what Heidi says to him?
Of course I did. Rest in cheese.
And there's a bitch on the end of it, too.
Did you, Big Bad has been vanquished. Did you expect the movie to take a turn into the emotional at this point? Once it's revealed that Grandpa might not make it.
The French delegates are fed the mind control cheese, become zombies, and they are killed in extremely gruesome fashion, but Grandpa does get bit. No, I did not expect the emotional turn as he's left to operate the bomb that they've planted in the factory there. I will say, Julio, and I'm not sure if you're going to agree with me on this, but this actor here, Grandpa, was David Schofield. With all due respect to Mr. Schofield, he was no Joe Morton. This wasn't Dyson holding the bomb, man. This was...
It doesn't. I mean, once you've seen that movie, once you've seen Dyson buy the farm in T2, every time you see somebody that offers to stay behind so they can hold off the bad guys, that's what you're gonna think of. And this guy, he didn't have the breathing down. Insert clip of Dyson dying here for comparison.
I don't know how much longer I can hold this.
And this is where the line is dropped. The only good cheese is fried cheese. And then the boom building blows up as Heidi and Clara and the remaining members of the resistance walk away from this exploding building. We did forget to call out that Knorr is killed by Heidi during the battle scene. He's impaled on a Swiss flagpole. It's quite the visual. And then there's only one man left, who is the scientist that kind of helped manufacture the cheese. And he's got a big shipment of it that he's trying to take for delivery. And he's cut off by Heidi and Clara, who have a motorcycle with a little side cart on it. And Clara breaks out this minigun and starts opening fire. And then we go to a freeze frame, and we're informed that Heidi and Clara will return in... Julio, did you catch the name of the sequel?
Was it Mad Heidi Forever? Mad Heidi Endgame?
No, it's Heidi and Clara will return in Heidi and Clara. That's the joke. Come on now.
Because of course. I just remember that they ended teasing a sequel that I'm assuming. Well, I don't know. I'm sure you will inform me of this movie's financial success or failure, and I guess that would determine if there's a sequel or not. But personally, I don't think we need it. I think that we've had about as much as we should of Heidi and Clara, and maybe it's time to move on to something else, tackle a different enemy. This was a weird movie, Alex, and that's putting it mildly.
Well, I've exhausted all of my resources for Contrarians Corner, so I'm ready to move to Real Talk if you are.
Let's do it.